I got into visual novels all the way back in middle school with the Zero Escape and Danganronpa series, and since then I've played my fair share of other visual novels and visual novel adjacent video games. Between my own experience and the general zeitgeist surrounding the genre, my conception of VNs had always been that they were these huge, in-depth time sinks that were always super dense with story and dialogue, rivaling the word counts of whole-ass books. Anytime I would sit down to start a new one, I'd always have to mentally prepare for the journey ahead, knowing that I was going to get invested in a lengthy narrative that required me to flex my reading comprehension skills, oh no! Like any novel, having a lot of words to tell your story with can be great for adding depth, fleshing out characters, building a complex narrative, and controlling the pacing. I imagine that, for a long time, the majority of visual novels were written to be this way because the authors had both the freedom to flesh out their story, as well as the expectation by publishers to create a robust enough experience to warrant releasing a fully priced game. This design philosophy has arguably given us some of the most interesting and impactful stories in gaming, at least in my opinion, and I don't think it's a stretch to say that the length of these games is an important part of what makes the experience so special. Danganronpa's executions carry so much weight because you get to spend time with these characters before they horribly die. You get sucked into Okabe's madness because you spend a lot of time going through the numerous routes with bad endings, and Uchikoshi's twists consistently make me shit my pants because they recontextualize everything I thought I knew for the last 30 hours of gameplay. And keep in mind, this isn't even getting into stuff like Fate or Tsukihime, which are even longer and revolve around specific character routes, where a huge part of the appeal comes from, you guessed it, spending a lot of time with the character you like. And then there's Yumineko, where Battler and Beatrice argue about whether magic is real for like 100 hours or something. But ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is that the time investment for all of these games is a big part of what makes them so impactful for so many people. However, after the rise of digital distributors, indie games, and self-publishing, we're now seeing a lot of shorter visual novels that don't have any of those prior expectations. You can pretty much say that about any genre of game, but I feel like visual novels have the added caveat of not being able to rely on things like addictive gameplay loops or modular game design, which can easily lengthen the experience. If you want a novel to be longer, you just have to write more words, there's not really any way around it. But with shorter VNs, I feel like that desire to make a strong impact with a time constraint, whether it's intentional or not, forces authors to be more creative with their game's design and to be more deliberate with the way that they write their stories. Smaller word counts usually mean that there's little to no fluff. Each individual line of text carries a certain weight to it, and it's important to the overall experience. Not to mention that anything not directly explained through text is conveyed through the aesthetic, the music, and yeah, even the gameplay. Once again, this isn't exclusive to short VNs, but I feel like they have to try a lot harder to get it right compared to longer ones. Why describe the feeling of being a late night bartender or the intricacies of mixing a cocktail when you can just have the player do it themselves? If done well, these kinds of short stories can be just as poignant as extensively written works, and even though there isn't as much content to look back on, I feel like with the best short VNs, you can still reflect on them as complete, realized, memorable experiences. All you have to do is help her go to the store and buy some milk. Only problem is, the world looks like, well, this. A bit crushed nightmare, like a Game Boy that had all the green replaced with purple, where the only sounds you hear are the droning music, along with the cute little bleeps and bloops of the text crawls. It's a simple premise, right? Go to the store and buy some milk? But the entire game permeates this feeling of anxiety and uncertainty, and you're never really sure what's going on or exactly how you're supposed to feel about it. You start by inputting your own name, but the game is presented from the first-person perspective of the unnamed main character, who uses the pronoun I to identify herself in her own thoughts. So already, it's kind of ambiguous what your role in all of this is, and the game is filled with little moments that make you question the reliability of the girl as a narrator and even yourself as the player character. The girl will break the fourth wall, she'll talk about conversations that never happened, and dialogue will get trapped in infinite loops. All the while, the game is aware that all of this is happening. Even the player character isn't totally in line with the player themselves. You often have the choice to pick between positive, encouraging responses and negative, hateful responses, but sometimes you only get one option which clearly doesn't align with any of your previous decisions, making you question just how much your choices actually matter, or if the choices are even yours to make. Combined with the oppressive music, dark subject matter, and even darker implications of the story, this should make for a very uncomfortable experience, and it kinda does, but the game actually balances it out by having a great sense of humor, at least in the first half before shit gets heavy. And I'd definitely say that all of this is tied together by the really natural sounding dialogue. The casual exchanges between the girl and the player character create an immediate sense of familiarity, which is really impressive considering the game's short length of just about 30 minutes. The girl's sincerity and even vulnerability at times makes it really easy to sympathize with her, and the writing, along with the atmosphere, create an experience that is surprisingly intimate at times. The game manages to balance its tone and hit every emotional beat without fumbling once, and you genuinely feel like you went on a little trip and experienced a part of this girl's life. It is a certified vibe. I really don't want to say too much more because it's such a short experience and I don't want to spoil more than I already have. So do yourself a favor and go play it. I copped this bitch on sale for 99 cents on Steam, so there is literally no excuse not to go play it. Go into your inventory, sell all those garbage stickers that aren't worth anything, and you should be able to scrounge up $1 so you can experience milk inside a bag of milk, inside a bag of milk, inside a bag of... Hey, you know what goes well with milk? If you've played Valhalla, then you've definitely seen Coffee Talk recommended on Steam as another visual novel barista simulator. And while it does have some obvious similarities in terms of gameplay and general storytelling, these are two very different games. For starters, the setting is akin to contemporary fantasy, with a much bigger emphasis on contemporary, taking place in basically New York, with humans living alongside elves and werewolves and shit. From as early as the title screen, this game absolutely nails the mellow, rainy vibes of running a chill, late-night cafe. Soft piano chimes punctuate the prompts, and the beautiful pixel art gives the characters such a fleshed-out presence at the counter. The game is filled with so many little details and animations, which not only help it distinguish itself from its PC-98 predecessors, but also just adds a great level of polish. I mean, this game is really pretty. Having so many different types of people visit the cafe gives you a lot of perspective on how this world's society and cultures have found ways to coexist, despite the monstrous difference between certain groups of people. It doesn't exactly go Lord of the Rings level deep with like the lore and the different races, but it does what it needs to do. There's some pretty obvious social commentary here, but the game isn't afraid to be a little cheeky with it. Like, there's a scene where one of the characters mentions a story idea involving a society of only humans, which is still somehow plagued with prejudice, only for the other characters to be like, what? That's dumb. That would literally never happen. Why would there be prejudice if there's only one species? Ahem. In the famous words of many a hipster, don't talk to me until I've had my coffee. Which is exactly what the game is like, because most of your conversations happen after you've served up a nice cup of joe, which can be as easy as looking up the recipe on your phone and hitting the right buttons, or as complex as trying to piece together a vague request that requires 3 ingredients prepared in exactly the right order and you only get 5 retries. Unless you save scum, like I did. I think the variety of drinks is actually pretty cool, and having the ingredients and beverages based on stuff you can actually find and make in real life adds an element of authenticity to the barista simulator aspect of the game. There's also a weirdly in-depth latte art minigame that I really suck at. I can't even draw a wiener, for Christ's sake. This thing is actually really tough. All you baristas in the comments, let me know if it's this difficult in real life too. The narrative is mostly divided among the various people who frequent the cafe, but the most consistent plot thread centers around a regular named Freya. She's usually the person you talk to the most when she's not pounding espressos and stressing out about work. She's really chill, and her struggle to break out of writing shitty news articles to become a fully fledged novelist is definitely something that a lot of artists and creators can relate to. Since so many colorful characters end up at the cafe and vent about their lives, Freya has plenty of real-world anecdotes to use as inspiration for her story. The cafe becomes a kind of safe haven for people who just need to calm down and reassess their lives. An orc isn't going to face the same issues as a werewolf who goes berserk once a month, or an interracial couple trying to figure out if they value their families over their love for each other. But at the end of the day, it's that variety of perspectives and the ability to just air everything out in a safe space, free from your daily troubles, at an ungodly time of night disconnected from the hustle and bustle of a busy city life, which makes this cafe so special. It's really sweet to see people develop new relationships or deepen existing ones after spending time at the cafe, and it feels really rewarding to see these characters push through their struggles and come out the other side as better people. And this is all thanks to the gracious owner of the cafe, you, the player. So, regarding the main character, I'm honestly not sure how I feel about them. You're told to input your name, so to some degree the main character is supposed to be some kind of like audience surrogate or self-insert. You aren't given too much of a personality other than generally pleasant, but the way all of your customers talk to you like you're the coolest, nicest person they've ever met feels ever so slightly like pandering to me. I don't know, maybe this is just me projecting super hard and reading way too into this, but I don't know, I always feel really weird when games treat me like I'm the shit when I as the player haven't really done anything to earn it. You open the cafe in the buttfuck middle of the night when only the truest of hipsters are out and about, and everyone's like, whoa, didn't think any place would be open this late at night, how do you even stay in business? And then you're like, ha, let me worry about that, you just enjoy yourself. It's like, whoa, okay dude, you're so cool, you don't have to worry about staying in business? So cool, dude. Okay, I'm definitely projecting, so let me stop here and keep my imposter syndrome to myself. Despite owning the cafe, you yourself are very much an outsider, in both a meta sense as the player and in a literal sense, as you'll find out in the ending, which I won't spoil. But yeah, certified vibes, it's cheap, it's short, maybe like 4 or 5 hours, go play it. You need to be living under a rock to not know what the deal is with Doki Doki Literature Club. But if you haven't been spoiled on anything, then I would highly recommend going in as blind as humanly possible. All you need to know is that Doki Doki is a great 4-hour romp that left a bigger impact on me than most other things that were longer than 4 hours. It set the internet on fire for a pretty good reason, and the vanilla version of the game is completely free on PC, so go check it out if you haven't already, and be very wary of spoilers on your way there. Okay, we good? Alright, so now that we're going full spoiler mode, I just want to thank MatPat for completely ruining the psychological horror twist for the probably 50 million people who saw these trash-ass thumbnails in their recommended. Yeah, so unfortunately, I wasn't able to go in completely blind on my first playthrough, so I was expecting this game to be more yandere sim than dating sim. Normally, I would have gone with Natsuki because she is a short queen who recognizes manga as the high art that it is, but on my first run, I actually went with Yuri because she wrote about artsy edgy shit, and I just assumed that I would get to the psychological horror stuff faster if I went with her route. It's a pretty short ride, but the game is paced exceptionally well. You never feel like any one scene or story beat goes on for too long, and you're given just enough time to get lulled into a false sense of security before shit starts slowly and meticulously hitting the fan. In my case, it did feel like I had to spend a fair amount of time talking to Yuri before she started to really open up, and it honestly sold me on the vibe of awkwardly getting to know someone who's normally very introverted. The nervous glances and careful interactions slowly evolve into more comfortable scenes, which eventually give way to some, subtly blatant horniness when y'all start intimately reading poetry together. I think part of what makes Doki Doki such a great piece of satire is how well it nails the thing it's satirizing. In the first couple of hours, it's really easy to get caught up in the wish fulfillment because of how well the game presents it. The atmosphere, the cute character designs, the bashful dialogue, and the way the girls become infatuated with you, all while framing your interactions with them in the otherwise innocent setting of the literature club, which arguably makes it even more horny because you're flirting and being intimate with each other at school, in front of the other club members. It adds that element of taboo and excitement that has been refined through years of H games and adult animation. It's like getting edged in the back of a classroom during lecture. Okay, wow, that was out of pocket. That's actually kind of gross. And once again, I have to bring up the pacing here, because despite its short length, the spiral into psychological horror is done gradually enough to make you feel unnerved even before anything actually happens. And then you start to notice things that were off from the very start. Why are Sayori's poems so depressing? Why does it feel like some of your choices don't matter? Why is Monica the only girl missing from the poem minigame? Why is Monica the only girl you can't hang out with? Why is her portrait facing completely forward while all the other girls are at a 3/4 perspective? And, oh my god, why is she the only one wearing thigh highs? Okay, this is all really sus. I should probably talk to Sayori about all this. This moment is fucking legendary. It's just sudden enough to absolutely destroy you, while also being foreshadowed enough that you know, without a shred of doubt, the signs were all there. This is when the psychological horror comes to the forefront, and the game just starts fucking with you. It's not like yanderes and fake glitches are revolutionary to gaming or anything, but I think Doki Doki handles them tastefully and incorporates them into its central themes meaningfully. Especially considering the narrative relevance of this being a satirical waifu dating simulator, with the actual twist being that Monica has become self-aware and has been manipulating the game and the characters because she wants to be with you, the player, because everyone else she's ever known is just a video game character and you are the only real person she has ever met. Needless to say, this is some crazy stuff, and there's really no other time like the first time you experience it. This is why I'm such a spoiler baby. Stuff like this, it hits different when you just don't know at all. It avoids being reliant on a cheap horror twist and actually blossoms into a really interesting commentary about waifu culture and people's relationship to video games and digital avatars. I know Doki Doki has been talked about to death and spoiled to hell and back, but I would still honestly recommend setting aside an afternoon and playing it for yourself. It's just really polished, actually fun. It is a fun game, I'm not gonna lie, and thought-provoking. Not to mention, it's only 4 hours long and the vanilla version is completely free. So yeah, I would say give it a go. Sela is a veteran cop who investigates crimes involving rogue androids and rampant AI. A pretty ironic career choice considering she had fallen in love with an android during her youth. But that was a long time ago, and since then, she's become pretty cynical towards the whole healthy relationship thing people keep telling her about. She excels at her job, executing an impressive level of tact and professionalism when dealing with androids, but no matter how much she can understand and manipulate the thought process of an AI, when it comes to her fellow humans, it can be a struggle just to get through the day. Her coworkers patronize her, her higher-ups expect the impossible, and she's just way too tired to deal with it all. The entire game is washed in these deep, cool colors, punctuated by soft neon glows, and underscored with heavy, brooding synthwave, which really draws you into the sci-fi setting and conveys Sela's oppressive isolation. At the end of a long day, Sela returns home and is greeted by Elaine, her AI companion. They have a very interesting relationship with each other. Sela has absolutely no filter when she talks to Elaine, because after all, Elaine is just a robot, an AI, not a real person. She has just enough of a human presence to keep Sela company without all the baggage that comes from having a real personality. When they talk, Elaine only ever gives straight, honest answers to Sela's unhinged questions, completely free of judgment. And when they don't talk, there's never any awkwardness or expectation to make conversation. Just having someone, or, something with her is enough for Sela. It makes their interactions feel weirdly intimate in a way, like neither of them have anything to hide, and depending on your view of artificial intelligence, it can almost seem like every conversation between these two is just Sela talking to herself. She makes fun of Elaine's old model and outdated operating system, but hypocritically keeps her around because she's afraid of change and just can't bear to let her go. It's like an old part of yourself that you hate and wish you could change, but you know that if you did, you'd lose a part of your personality that makes you who you are. This might seem kind of sad or pathetic, and, to a certain extent, it is, but look at the reality of what it's like to live with another person and to have most of your existence tied to another sentient being. Having that constant pressure to be the best version of yourself, the threat that you'll become uninterested with each other if enough time passes, the exhaustion that comes with dealing with another person's shit on top of your own baggage, there's just so much that can go wrong. In the US, almost 50% of marriages end in divorce. So, statistically speaking, the chances of having a lifelong marriage are the same as calling heads or tails on a coin flip. And if you want a happy marriage, well, break out the D20 and pray for 16 or higher. Looking at it from that, admittedly pretty cynical perspective, you can kind of see how an unassuming, expectationless android companion doesn't seem so bad. Hell, it's something that's been happening for a while now. People marrying their computers and Nintendo DS's and stuff. It's weird, but not exactly illogical, if you think about it like that. Seeing Sela's abrasive personality clash with the most average milquetoast people early on in the game cements how disconnected she feels with normal society, and it makes it pretty easy to get into her headspace even when she's cynically confiding in an android. If nobody is willing to accept her, then she'll have to rely on someone whose very existence is defined by accepting her without question. But by allowing herself to just concede like that, it's almost like Sela is giving up on herself, staying in this old, stunted safe space where she goes through the same comfortable routines over and over again, with the only change being the gradual degradation of Elaine's fabricated personality as Sela snuffs out the only defining quirks of her programming. Until one day, Sela comes home from work and finds Elaine with her memory and personality completely wiped. No backups, no saves, complete factory reset. After all these years, Sela's negligence and comfortable ignorance finally caught up to her, and she's left with a blank slate of an android who is insultingly identical to the husk that she had grown so attached to. The first hour of this game does such an effective job of drawing you into Sela's life and her dilemma that you really feel the loss of Elaine. She could barely even be classified as a person, but it's clear that she was very important to Sela for a very long time, to the point where Sela definitely took her existence for granted. The subsequent shock and disruption of her life actually pushes Sela to fill that hole in her heart with another android. And this is where we meet Mara. The entire vibe of the game brightens with Mara's presence, as she becomes the unintentional light of Sela's life. Unlike Elaine, Mara is said to be a much more advanced AI, and her ability to learn and replicate human behavior gives Sela a companion who has the capacity to think for herself. This pushes Sela way out of her comfort zone and forces her to confront the unhealthy parts of her personality with the help of a partner who is willing to challenge her while still at the end of the day accepting her for who she is. In contrast to Sela's projection onto Elaine's blank personality, Mara's innocence and naive worldview are what allows Sela to truly reflect on herself and how she views her life. The static, droning nights sitting with Elaine are replaced with these fluttering, tense, flustered interactions with Mara, and I fucking love how the music changes to reflect this shift in tone when Mara's around. The track Romance and Android starts playing, and it sounds like a really cute version of the main theme that warps and struggles to exist before settling into a bright piano melody with a soft beat pulsing in the background. It's just a perfect auditory representation of how Sela feels about Mara. The developing relationship between these two really is the driving force of the game, and seeing them form a bond of trust and even romance while Sela juggles her conflicted and morally questionable feelings makes for a great central narrative. Oh, and if there was any doubt in your mind, this is 100% Yuri, so if you weren't already convinced to play this, there should be nothing stopping you now. I haven't mentioned much in terms of the other characters, but there are a few important side plots happening alongside Sela's story that I won't spoil. Let's just say that there's enough mystery, conspiracy, and cyberstalking to keep the game engaging and to give the central narrative some real weight. The creators clearly took a lot of inspiration from classic sci-fi and sci-fi anime like Ghost in the Shell and Akira, and you can really tell with some of the character designs and world building. They wear their inspirations on their sleeve, which isn't a bad thing at all, because 1, the game doesn't rely on these inspirations, and 2, if you're into this stuff, then it's just really cool to see creators who not only share the same interests, but also incorporate them into their own work to create something that feels very personal. I haven't even watched Gits yet, but I immediately recognized the police camouflage and I was like, yo, that's sick. Every chapter also starts off with a quote from a classic work of sci-fi, which kind of sets the theme for that particular chapter. Cool stuff. My playthrough was maybe 5 or 6 hours, big recommendee from me. There's a free demo if you want to try it out, and you can grab it on sale for pretty cheap. Hey, thanks for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed. If you played any of these games, or if you end up playing them in the future because of this video, please let me know in the comments because I'd love to hear what you guys think. Did you enjoy them? Were they like good recommendations, or am I just completely trash all the way through? And let me know if you enjoyed this kind of video as well. I know it's a little bit different from my usual stuff, but I did have a lot of fun making it, and I'm probably going to put Volume 1 somewhere in the title, so there's going to be more whether you like it or not. You know, the least you could do is send some kind words my way, come on now. A huge thanks to my patrons as well. The link is in the description if you want to join the Patreon for some early access stuff, and previews to upcoming videos, and, you know, to get your name in the credits. Stay literate, and I'll see you on the next one.